I devoted my life to this. Like I kind of took time off work and just hung out with this man, who would teach me. And my brain started feeling better. My nervous system started to really regulate. And I just started to build up my life force. And it was just, it's really amazing that these things exist, like Tai Chi and Qigong, and like they just are not popularized, especially for women. I mean, that's like, everyone does yoga. The whole world does yoga at this point, but it's just not, it's not something that's mainstream, and it's a detriment to people because they could be getting so much better if they just knew about these types of practices.
Do you want to wake up feeling like you're stepping into who you're meant to be, into the best possible version of you? What if I told you that the key to your best life, health, and happiness are all around you? You just have to find what works for you. I'm Hope Pedraza, and I believe that there isn't just one way to live a healthy and meaningful life, and that all you need is a little inspiration to make changes that last from the inside out. Each week, I'll be sharing tangible tips and inspirational interviews to help you on your journey. These are the steps to take to improve your life and live with purpose. This is Hopeful and Wholesome. Hey y'all, welcome back to Hopeful and Wholesome. I have on the show today Danielle Pashko, and she is a functional nutritionist and chronic illness coach with 2 decades of experience. Her specialties are immune health, weight loss, digestive health, children's nutrition, women's health, Lyme disease, and long COVID. She herself came ill with Lyme disease and long COVID. And so her knowledge of nutrition and functional health was ultimately what healed her. And specifically, this is what the cool thing we're going to talk about on this show. Specifically, she immersed herself in martial arts, specifically Qigong and Tai Chi. And we're going to talk about Qigong. Qigong is what she claims to kind of have set herself over the edge to really start her healing practice. She had done all the supplements and done all the functional protocols, but it was the Qigong that really kind of set herself on the trajectory to true healing. And she went from being chronically fatigued to currently practicing Wing Chun Kung Fu, which is Bruce Lee's practice. It's like legit Kung Fu, y'all. And building up her internal strength with these ancient disciplines. And we are talking all about Qigong today. We'll talk about martial arts in general, but specifically Qigong and why this was the thing that was so effective in her healing her body and what makes it such an effective way to cultivate inner energy and really help that life force energy in the body and promote healing. I love this conversation because this is something that these practices of martial arts like Tai Chi and Qigong are so undervalued. I think we just don't talk about them a lot and really what the benefits are. And so this is such a unique perspective on healing and being able to work through chronic pain, neurological symptoms, fatigue, and how it can really bring healing to the body. So let's jump in. All right, y'all, I'm here with Danielle. And Danielle, I just want to jump straight in because I am so fascinated by your journey. And thank you for joining us, first of all, for hopping on and sharing your expertise. Yeah, me too. And I want to jump in because you have a journey, which we'll talk about, a journey with Lyme disease and with long COVID. And you're a functional nutritionist, so you know all the things. But in your journey, the thing that made the biggest difference was your journey in martial arts. And I want to start with that because I find that completely fascinating. So I would love to know how you decided to do that, like in your journey of recovery, like what drew you there and why that was the thing that made the biggest difference for you.
Yeah, it seems kind of like counter to what was going on with me to think that I was so sick and like martial arts is going to be the thing, almost bedbound. I had been working in functional clinics for around 20 years or so. And, working with some of the brightest people who worked with very complex chronic illnesses. And I was so surprised that, when I had Lyme, I ended up recovering. But then when I had COVID, it was a very mild case and it just knocked me out. It almost felt like I had a traumatic brain injury. Mm-hmm. I was having like dizzy spells, blurred vision, extreme fatigue, I couldn't take it anymore. And I did every nutritional application possible. Some things help to a degree. I'm not knocking nutrition. It has merit and it works, but I just wasn't getting to where I needed to. I did about 100 hyperbaric oxygen sessions.
Oh, wow.
There, probably 100 acupuncture sessions, neurofeedback, biofeedback, peptide therapy, cold plunging, infrared sauna, like every biohacking thing you could possibly think. And I got to a point that, I couldn't get help. And I said, okay, I've always been very spiritual. And I really thought, let me try to tap into that aspect because I'm basically like, I have no other option.
Yeah.
I got really heavy into my visualization, and my visualization was looking into, I used to watch Kung Fu movies as a kid, and I hadn't been practicing yet. So I would watch myself in these visualizations doing Kung Fu. And for me, if I was already able to do these types of forms, it wasn't about like, how am I going to get there? I was already in the solution of feeling better. But with that being said, I'm like, how could I actually ever do this? This is way too physical for the body that I'm in right now. So I started off with Tai Chi and Qigong, which is actually Kung Fu, but it's Tai Chi, but it's a slower version.
Mhm.
That's how I started. And then it built me up to get into other forms of martial arts and made a tremendous impact.
Wow. So what was the thing that triggered you to visualize yourself doing Kung Fu? Like, why was that there a reason that was where you?
I mean, I always loved it and I always saw it as power.
Mhm.
I'm very drawn to strong women. And, I would watch these movies back that are even like before my time, like the 70s or whatever. And there were a lot of men, but when I would watch these women do these movements, I thought it was just amazing. And there's one type of Kung Fu in particular that I'm, learning right now and practicing called Wing Chun. And interestingly, Wing Chun was developed by a woman. It was developed by a Shaolin nun who practice this form in a way because women get a lot of times attacked in close range. So it taught you self-defense.
Mhm.
She to her disciple named Wing Chun. And Wing Chun taught it to her husband, who taught it to men, who ended up, Bruce Lee started learning it and it became popularized. So I thought if there's a form that I could possibly do, like how badass is that? Like
Yeah,
what started it and like
totally.
that just seemed like, okay, let me just see myself there
Mhm.
rather than thinking about like, how am I going to get there? So I just kept visualizing it. And then it
Yeah.
just moved into me actually doing the practice. I mean, I just left right now. I just left
Yeah, I
class.
love that.
So yeah, but the Tai Chi and the Qigong is what built me up to be able to get there
Mhm.
because, I was so weak and I was very ungrounded when I started doing the practices. I mean, I ended up meeting this teacher who teaches a lot of seniors because Tai Chi gets this kind of like PR for, just
Old
basically
people. Yeah.
the elderly, right? Like,
Right.
and I had been a yoga instructor also for 20 years in addition
Hmm.
to nutrition. So I was, very coordinated and flexible. But at that point, I was so sick, I didn't even think I can do a class of people who were like in their 70s and 80s. I felt
Yeah.
embarrassed. So we practiced one-on-one together and spent a lot of time. And it just helped me to feel grounded. We would practice in the park several days a week. I mean, I devoted my life to this. Like I kind of took time off work and just hung out with this man, who would teach me. And my brain started feeling better.
Mm.
My nervous system started to really regulate, and I just started to build up my life force. And it was just, it's really amazing that these things exist, like Tai Chi and Qigong, and like they just are not popularized, especially
Mhm.
for women. I mean, that's
Yeah.
like it's everyone does yoga, the whole world does yoga at this
Yep.
point, but it's just not. It's not something that's mainstream, and it's a detriment to people because they could be getting so much better if they just knew about these types of practices.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about like getting started with the Tai Chi and the Qigong? What do you think? What about those practices do you think kind of put you on the right trajectory to healing? What aspects of that?
So both Tai Chi and Qigong, they focus on the five elements, which each element is associated with another organ. You already know this, but think about acupuncture. So if you're going to an acupuncturist office and they say, let's say you have spleen chi deficiency and you're experiencing a lot of worry and you're having a lot of weakness, they're trying to build you up in that area. And that is the earth element. Or, maybe you have issues with anger and you're blowing up, you're very fiery. That's a fire element. So these practices are almost like internal acupuncture. They work on the five elements and they help to strengthen you where you have imbalance. So I really believe that a lot of our illness or people experiencing these things is connected to our emotional state. I'm not
Mhm.
percent yes, or genetic reasons. I mean, I got bit by a tick. That's not emotional. I
Mhm.
get it. But once you're going through with it and the way you handle it, it's kind of like making you have to you have to do some accounting for yourself and think like, where is the other problems, the things that I'm not addressing that need to be healed and need to be healed. And, that's really what I started getting out of it. And also the act of slowing down. I'm very type A. Even when I did yoga, it was Ashtanga, which is very fast.
Yes.
And this forces you to be slow, but that's all I had in me. So I was okay with that. And it helps with like proprioception, the nervous system. You're doing these movements that are kind of strange because we're not used to moving in such a way that it really helps your brain work in a certain way. And so it really was beneficial, especially for those reasons.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So I just tried Qigong for the first time like a month or so ago, or maybe no, it was more than that, a couple months ago. This like event, this wellness event I did, and I was so fascinated by it. And I knew kind of the meaning and stuff behind it and what it was, but I had never done it before. And it's so interesting. And it was just a short little class. And she kind of explained like what the movements were and stuff. And I kept thinking like what, like you said, like everybody does yoga and everybody knows yoga. It's super common. But learning, like the learning part I love because I love to nerd out on any of that. I love the learning and the meaning and all. I love all of that. And I'm thinking, okay, why do more people not know about this? Like, why is this not practiced more often? And I would love to just hear your thoughts on that. Why these things are less mainstream than yoga when they've been around for centuries? Like these aren't new things. So I would just love to hear your thoughts on why maybe they're not so mainstream and yeah.
I think it's about a lot of the PR that came along with it. So for example, the Ashtanga yoga, which I don't know if you practice it, but what I practice, which is a very active form of yoga, and the majority of people you see practicing and are like women, with their aloe yoga, their Lululemon bags, and they're running around. But I mean, the way it was traditionally taught was in India for 12-year-old boys to calm their racing minds and get them to calm down and would do all the movement. And then they would go into the softness and the meditative practice. But that wouldn't really fly in the West, right? So it took people like Madonna and Gwyneth Paltrow back 25 years ago, like to come here and kind of popularize it. And we haven't really had an ambassador for a lot of the martial arts. And especially, because we look at Tai Chi and Qigong mostly for elderly and haven't really seen these like young ambassadors come out. And I think if that happens, then I think there will be more awareness. I mean, I would love to bring more attention to this because it's just so not for the elderly. I mean, even Tai Chi itself, yes, it is. People in Asia use it like medically. It's that is made for a health promoting practice. At the same time, and it's a very martial practice, meaning that it could work in a fight. It's self-defense. These moves have application, but the way that it's marketed is for health promotion, which is great, but there's so many other uses for it. And, we're just in such a crazy time in the world right now everything is like upside down, and most people I know who are awake are stressed out and not, kind of feel unsettled with the way of the world. And that's what I like about it so much, because it just really helps to ground you. And, and it's not about like fashion. Like you don't have to show up to a yoga class and feel like you're all put together. Like it's nothing, you could really just be yourself and get into being present with the movement. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I think that, there is a certain narrative around specific types of yoga that can either attract people or turn people off, but that's not what it was intended for. And so I think that being present part, so yes, we see these types of practices, like we see them marketed. Like I think about it too in the movies. It's like, it's always the old people in the park doing Tai Chi. Like, why do we not do Tai Chi? So what do you see as some of the biggest benefits for younger people? I mean, obviously chronic health issues like you. I mean, you helped heal your body. What do you see are some of the other benefits for just everyday people, like younger people, that they could get out of these?
Well, it really builds up your internal strength, your chi. So when you get really rooted, it it also it makes you rooted, it makes you softer, and it makes you notice things differently. I'm in Miami a few months out of the year now. I was never flirty and I've always been a New Yorker. Like I never drove a car and I was nervous, but just like the softness of being able to get behind the wheel and drive a car, or even if you're playing other sports, a lot of people are with that no pain, no gain mentality.
Mm-hmm.
They're not light on their feet. They're very like aggressive with things.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you're another kind of athlete and you're using this, I think it can make your athletic performance a lot more refined. And for that, I think there's a lot of benefit. And just with, flexibility and movement. I mean, the health promoting parts, but yes, also, and just like having the mental focus. But another thing that I feel really well with the Qigong is there's so much EMF, electromagnetic fields all over. I mean, you're doing a podcast, you're in the computer, we're bombarded with Wi-Fi and it's so unnatural. Everyone's on their smartphones scrolling all day. And when I do Qigong, I like to do it outdoors, like in the park or when I'm in Miami, down by the beach, and I just take my shoes off and it feels like a bath to wash off all that dirty radiation that we're being exposed to. And it sounds like seriously, like that really works. But yeah, it actually does.
Yeah. Yeah. I just had an episode a few weeks ago about grounding and the science, but I think there's actually a lot of science around grounding. So I mean, it's like a double whammy if you're doing the Qigong or the Tai Chi or whatever you're doing with the grounding. It's like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing.
You feel really good and really good in your brain. And it's like, and things, and it does help your immune system. So, a lot of things just don't affect you as much, like your susceptibility to getting sick, your susceptibility to being so impacted by Wi-Fi or other things bothering you. There's just definitely just a lot of benefit.
Yeah. Well, and you said earlier, you were saying, that because I am also the belief that every physical thing happening on the body has this energetic, emotional root cause. And you mentioned like, oh, got bit by a tick. Well, yes, you did. But like I always ask my client, like, but why were you a hospitable host? Right. So it's like people get exposed to things.
Yeah.
But it's why were you the hospitable host for that disease or that, whatever it is?
Well, a lot of times, that's a really good point you make, is that I always feel like there's usually a stressor or an event that happens that causes a tick bite, or I see this a lot even with long haulers and COVID, that it's not that, they think, well, I was so healthy before and I don't understand what happened. But maybe you were healthy but you had things running in the background. You could have had a high viral load you did not know about, like Epstein-Barr, the cytomegalovirus, or some hidden virus, other viruses, or things like that. And then suddenly there's an event that happens. You go through a breakup, you loss of a loved one, you move, you lost your job, whatever it is. And then suddenly you could have had one of these situations, Epstein-Barr, which can also cause chronic fatigue, or you had Lyme disease. You might have had it, but you were not a hospitable host because you had a strong immune system.
Exactly.
But when you're weakened by an outside stressor or an emotional stressor, then it's sort of like it weakens your defenses and then it comes out. So practices like this, what I try to explain to people is, because I'm in the functional world and because I do a lot of nutrition, I also do functional testing on people. And prior to all of this happening to me, I was like about every single functional test. I'm like, you need your adrenal tests and you need to check your gut microbiome. And yes, those things count. It's important. You should do all that stuff. But people do so much testing, and if you start looking, everyone has something going on with their body, especially with functional testing. Things are going to come out a little wonky. But if you are doing these kind of practices, even if your lab work looks a little weird, or maybe you've been told that you have some kind of diagnosis, or maybe you have ADHD, or maybe you have something like that. Yeah, it's still there. But when you do these practices, they're like running in the background. Like they're not affecting your day to day, and they're making you less symptomatic. Like people say, well, do you still have Lyme disease? Are you in remission? I'm like, well, yeah, if I do my lab work, I'll see those bands come up. Like I'll see stuff happen, but it's just not impacting me in the same way. I built up my reserve and my life force, that it's just not hurting as bad.
That's it.
That's what I try to tell people. Like, don't be so scared of diagnosis. This when, when you go to the doctor, oh my God, but I heard I had this and that. And I try to tell them, like, don't attach yourself to those labels, because you can do things to pull out of it, despite if your lab work looks a little weird, what you want to do. And don't let fear rule you, and that's what I had to learn. Like, okay, I get it. I'm more susceptible to things and I don't take care of myself. But if I maintain these rituals, I can feel well and have a totally normal and functional life. And a lot of people don't believe they can. And
that's it. And I led a workshop a couple weeks ago with a local working moms group here. And we were talking about that, how in the conventional medical system, you get a diagnosis and it's kind of like, period, the end. Like, that's it. Like, this is your diagnosis. That's it. And for the most part, now this is, there are some more progressive doctors who might dive into things deeper, but for the most part, it's like, it's like a death sentence, essentially. It's like, oh, okay. Like, well, you just, we aren't giving other options. We aren't given anything else. And I think also because the conventional medical system does not integrate the mind and body, obviously, like, this is not like an option we're given. And I think this is such a good point about building up that life force energy. And I think that part, it can seem like woo or out there, whatever, for, analytical minds. But I think if we really think about everything that you just said, like, yes, you have Lyme disease, right? It's in your body, but you are a perfectly healthy, functioning person, human, functioning optimally. And so I think just that alone, just you alone, and there's tons of cases like that, right? Where it's like you have these things, but you have been able to build up this life force energy inside of you so that you can function. And I think that's so undervalued and underestimated. And I think probably not quite understood how much that impacts your ability to thrive in life, regardless of,
like before I started practicing, I developed a syndrome called POTS, which is called orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. I was having like these fainting spells. My blood pressure would drop, my heart rate would race, and I became like agoraphobic. I didn't want to go outside. I went from neurologist to neurologist, and they diagnosed me with something called CIDP, which is almost like MS. Okay. They told me that, diagnosed the POTS. They told me I needed IV immunoglobulin therapy, which is a nurse comes over and gives you human plasma. I nurse sit with me for 5 hours doing this treatment on me. After I was done, I felt like I had meningitis on my head. My mind, they're like, you need to do it. And I remember crying when I heard these diagnoses. I was like, oh my God, like this is going to be forever. Like, and I just believed it. And then suddenly, like, I kind of forgot about it once I started doing these things. I'm like, F that. Like, I'm not even listening to, like, I'm not saying that you shouldn't listen to doctors. I had thyroid cancer in the past, just FYI, back when I was 30 years old. I had my thyroid removed and I did radiation, and that's what I needed to do. And I am not against traditional medical.
Totally.
So I want to be clear on that. But there are certain things, they didn't give me any real solutions. Right. So I just sort of just like said, no, that's not me. Okay. Maybe that's what came up, but on my testing, but I don't feel symptomatic. So like now I have clients I work with and they're going through the same thing. And they're like, oh, my neurologist, I have this, I have that. And I have another scan next week. And then I'm getting an MRI. And I'm like, just breathe. And try to, and see if you can do some things to help yourself, because you're going to be on this, like this roller coaster of chasing symptoms. And if you think that's not affecting your nervous system and scaring the crap out of you, like, and they have reason to feel that way, but that's because they go to their traditional doctor who's like allopathic and it's like, well, I don't know what to do. Like, see your specialist. And I ended up taking a year off of seeing doctors after all this happened. I just said, you know what, I'm going fully, like, I'm medicine free, and I'm just going to work on building myself up. And it's the best that I've felt. And, I'm not saying, there's always certain situations where people need to do things differently.
Sure.
But for me, just not like scaring myself and working on the solution.
Yeah.
So beneficial.
Yeah, that's it. Well, and I think I'm with you. Like, I'm not against doctors and allopathic care. Like, if I have an emergency situation, I'm going to go see a friggin' doctor. Like, we need
stuff. Like, if you need an emergency room, you need stuff like that. When it becomes chronic, like, I just didn't want to be on all these medicines. I'm
totally.
I want to do that. And I don't want to have like come to me and I don't want to have side effects. And like,
Mhm.
I'm just not feeling that. And and they were like, oh, it'll help me fatigue. This helped my fatigue,
Mhm.
So that's really where I want to focus. I want to do things as naturally as possible if it allows me to. And of course, I have a very well managed diet. I also eat a low histamine diet because I know what my triggers are and
Mhm.
I'm careful about that. I have mast cell activation syndrome, which is very common amongst people who have chronic illness.
Mhm.
Mast cell activation syndrome, just people who don't know, it's people who have, especially as a sensitive to histamine, high histamine foods, and also environmental triggers and things like that. But I have become much less sensitive too. I used to walk into a nail salon and smell the chemicals and have to
Oh, yeah.
run out. It doesn't
Mhm.
bother me anymore.
Mhm.
Literally one of those people who would be in a supermarket or like a pharmacy and be like smell detergents or be in a Sephora and I couldn't deal with the perfume.
Mhm.
I don't notice it anymore. It's not that I don't have mast cell activation anymore. I probably do, but it's just that I've built up my own reserves that it's just not penetrating.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes total sense. That makes total sense. Well, and kind of like the way we started, where I was saying that you had done all these nutrition things, but it was the martial arts that was really what pushed you to, on your healing paths. I think, I mean, and I tell my clients this too, is why, I do a lot of nervous system work and subconscious reprogramming, all that kind of stuff. And I tell my clients, you could take all the supplements you want, right? We can talk about diet till the cows come home. But if that life force energy is stuck, stagnant, not flowing, like it's none of that is going to do anything. So I love that that's the part that you're bringing forward, and that the martial arts for you was what you talked about, that chi, like getting that life force energy flowing again. I mean, I think this is a perfect illustration of that. Like we have to focus on that part too. Yes, the nutrition part and all the holistic things, are
Well,
helpful.
what I will say about the nutrition part that did actually help me that works is there's a lot of triggers there can be a lot of glucose dysregulation when you're not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I wore a continuous glucose monitor
Yeah.
several months while I
Mm-hmm.
was, and that really helped me because it, you know, because I was going through so many neurological things and swings with dizziness and feeling off, I would notice that my glucose was definitely dysregulated from
Right.
not only food, but also stressors. So it
Stress.
would,
Yeah.
so the app that I had, there's a few different apps, but when I would see a spike or I'd see it go down, it would not only say like, what have you eaten, but did you go through a stressor? What happened?
Mm.
And you see the correlation. And when you can see it in real time and be like, oh my God, like I was so stressed out. I was screaming at this person or felt like screaming at them.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly you're like, you see your sugar go up. You're like, wow. And then I would do the opposite. Whereas, not only would I look at food, but I would hang out in a flotation tank and really calm down my nervous system. And I would watch a high glucose reading be so regulated
Mm-hmm.
in a dark room and a float tank. And I was,
Mm-hmm.
wow, so our stress, emotions, and our food play a
Mm-hmm.
role in this
Yeah.
all like dysfunction that's going on throughout our
Yep.
body. So, there are some tools that I've taken from how I practice nutrition that I incorporate in my life, but just in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love that. And that's such a good point to bring up about the blood sugar situation, because I think a lot of times people think, oh, my diet's perfect. My blood sugar has to be fine. But I don't think we talk enough about how stress affects our blood sugars.
Really, I had such a good diet when all this happened. I mean, my diet, I was following basically an AIP, an autoimmune
Sure.
protocol / paleo diet. But even with that, my readings were off the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how does someone eat like that? Doesn't even eat sugar, doesn't
Right.
eat gluten, doesn't eat dairy. Like, what's going on? And a lot of it was stress, and my body was so freaked out because I was feeling so unwell. And it was like this constant cycle. And and also I did have to change my diet that I thought was so seemingly perfect just to help my brain temporarily.
Mm.
I remember because I was eating, so many vegetables. I was like a vegetable, like every meal was like vegetables, 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 which vegetables are good for you.
Mhm.
But it's like the histamine, the oxalate, the lectin,
Mhm.
like things were actually troublesome for me.
Triggering. Yeah.
So triggering me. So I had to do some elimination diet to get through this and switch up the way I ate a little bit. And it also helped my neurological functioning. But it took much these changes took much better once I was doing these martial arts practices
Mhm.
and it came together at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. So for people listening who are now intrigued about all of this talk about martial arts, how would you recommend someone get started? Like, is it kind of how you started? Like, okay, maybe start with the Tai Chi and the Qigong, because now you're in
Yeah,
Kung Fu, which we haven't really talked about.
right.
This is like a whole
Yeah,
other thing.
right. I would say so there's like the internal forms, which is the Tai Chi and Qigong. That's where I would start because that is really for all levels and you can really modify. I mean, there are people who, don't have a lot of strength or have a lot of pain and it's a lot of mindfulness and a lot of slowness and rooting and that's what we need. But you're also doing all these things that build you up like you're waking up the whole body. You're doing a lot of tapping. You're doing a lot of hitting the stomach and your dantian, like you're working on this area, like just this alone. Sometimes when I was like at my worst, just standing by the beach or in the park, I would stand like in a horse stance very low and I didn't have that much strength. And I would hit my stomach 100 times, 200 times, 300 times. I still do about 100 of these a day to 200 a day. But just that gave me so much strength. So that's what
Mhm.
work on the basics. Qigong is a really good place to start because, Tai Chi it actually does take quite some coordination when you're
Mhm.
really with it, but the Qigong is just awesome. It's
Mhm.
so awesome. And I feel like, I mean, I even work with people with all kinds of things going on, even from, across the board, from Parkinson's to cancer to
Mhm.
are able to do the Qigong, and it's just so happened that I just really thought Kung Fu was very cool. And like when I have the confidence in my body to know how strong I can be, it's very exciting. So that's why I started practicing Wing Chun Kung Fu. And that's why I'm in the city this week. I'm normally in Miami during the winter, but I come up every month and I spend some time to practice because I just love it. And like it's reinforcement is so important to our brains and letting us know we're healing. And I'm like, if I can be in this class and I could be like, sparring with guys and like strong and like last night I did almost 3 classes I stayed
Oh
for,
my
I just
gosh.
wanted to get the most out of
That's
it,
awesome.
class, then I did like a striking class and a sparring class and I'm like, and just in my mind, I walked out of there so pumped. I was like, God, for where I came from to be able to do this, like this feels like so like assuring to me.
Mm.
So I know I'm not saying start off with like, doing that type of kung fu. That's too much. But what I want to say is we don't give ourselves enough credit to think what's possible.
Mm.
And this is what I want to say. Like healing is really possible. And everyone's like, but you're so healthy. Like, yeah, I know what you went through. Trust me. I went through cancer. I went through this. I went through nurses coming over. I went through a very dark time where I didn't even, there was points in my life where I was like, I used to say terrible things like
Mm.
dogs get put down when they're like in a lot of people
Mm.
like me. These were things that would come out of my mouth.
Sure.
And I've always been resilient, but through health and always, being so physically fit, it was just a challenge that I'm like, this is just unacceptable. Like I cannot live like this or I don't want to live. I have to regain my strength. And I just went like tunnel vision.
Mhm.
I'm going to figure this out.
That's powerful. That's amazing. That's such an empowering story. And I think that is a piece to bring out. Because like I said, I've only done the Qigong the one time, but it did feel empowering and it felt a grounding, as you mentioned grounding earlier, feel so grounded and connected with your body and connected with the universal energy. Like it was just, yeah, it's all those things in one. So I do have one more question I want to ask as we start to wrap up, something I like to ask everybody, but can you just let everybody know where they can find out more about you and everything that you do and the work that you do?
Sure. So I just started a new community called Soul Hacker. It's kind of a play on words like a biohacking, except it's not so much tapping into your biology, it's tapping into the essence of your
I
soul.
love that.
It's spelled SOULHAKKER, so it's spelled differently. So my website's soulhacker.com, and it's a community where I actually show the daily soul series, and which are the videos with my teacher, because I'm not a teacher, but we practice a lot of what I did to get better. So I actually do the series every day just for my own health. So it's on there, and then just some information from leaders in the industry who like to talk about this kind of stuff. And then, but I feel like, it sort of feels coming together like a compilation of like my life's work is like a patient and a practitioner, all of it coming together, and how the paradigm has shifted from just focusing so much on food and all of that to we really have to focus on our soul. So that's where I'm also on Instagram, the soul hacker.
I love that. Perfect. Of course, all that will be in the show notes. So y'all can go check that out and give Danielle a follow and learn about all the things that she's doing. So the last question that I want to ask you is, what do you think is the most important thing you can do to live with purpose?
To live with purpose. Well, this is my personal feeling, but people can choose whether to take it or not. I think faith is tremendous. And I think that's been a huge anchor for me to believe that things are possible to change. And also, I do believe in a higher power, and I talk to him every day. And I think having a belief makes you feel like there's purpose to things that are, I don't want to say painful because it sounds so cliche, but really, I mean, I think having faith, that's it for me.
I love that. I agree. Totally agree. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for the work that you're doing and just spending time with us today. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to Hopeful and Wholesome, y'all. If you found value in this week's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review to let me know what you thought. I'd love to know what you find useful in these episodes so I can know how to provide the most value I can to my listeners. And if you have topics you'd like to know more about, I'd love to hear those as well. So shoot me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. It's @TheHopePedraza, or you can visit my website, hopefulandwholesome.com. Thanks, y'all.